Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our December NSLP webinar. We're so glad to have you all join us. Before we get started on the actual agenda, just a few housekeeping measures. Number one, please make sure that you keep yourself muted so we don't have any potential feedback. And number two, if you have questions, please make sure you submit those questions through the Q&A rather than through the chat feature. So with that, we'd like to get started, and I would like to just let everyone know that the entire team is in the room today. So we're happy to have the group at CMP. We also have Colleen and a few others joining us via phone. So glad to have them as well. Thank you for giving us some of your time today. So our agenda for this morning's webinar includes an update on the PEBT summer program. Also, we're going to announce what we call our TinyBytes release. Then we have some important USDA Foods updates that we'll cover. And then Sean is going to share with us some important TIG grant information. And then we do have a few timely reminders as far as program operations for school year 21-22. So let's go ahead and turn the time over now to Cambria, and she'll cover our PEBT information.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sure by now you all have seen my emails about summer, but if you haven't, here's just a reminder that the summer PEBT upload is now open. And this benefit is available to all districts in Idaho that were operating under NSLP, SSO, or SFSP during the 2020-2021 school year. This upload will end on December 10th, so please get that upload in by December 10th, earlier if possible. There will be one opportunity to upload correction files. This will be open from mid-January to mid-February. And if you have any questions, or if you're a new director, or you just don't know too much about PEBT, please feel free to email or call me, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Cambria. And now we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what we've been doing here at the Department of SDE with child nutrition. One of the things that we've tried to incorporate is using our time that has been made available since we were able to cancel the administrative reviews and work towards a technical assistance type model that is easy for us to disseminate information. So what we've done is we have created what we call TinyBytes. They're essentially micro video trainings where we take information and put it into very short instructional videos. And they're essentially focused on teaching one single narrow topic, rather than the way we've always disseminated information, which is typically through a training of sorts that encompasses many hours of your time. So the reason that we decided to do this is twofold. We realized that operations of these programs is difficult at best, but also we have a substantial number of new food service directors joining us during school year 21-22, and we really felt like we needed to give them information in bite-sized pieces. So you'll note that the visual on the screen shows that we have actually added to the CMP training portal a tile for those TinyBytes micro video trainings. Now we are still in the process of developing those, but I do want to share with you some of the topics that will be covered. Right now there are 2 available videos, but the topics right now include USDA Foods, procurement by American, PEBT, capital expenditure requests, approving free and reduced applications, direct certification, verification for cause, tips and tricks for production records, meal counting and claiming, and obviously we have many more topics that will break down into digestible portions for you all to enjoy. So please feel free to visit that link. And like I said, there are just a couple up there. We're working on our requirements to make them all ADA compliant, and that does take a little bit of time. So we'll be releasing those, one here, one there, as we move through the rest of this school year, with the hope that they'll be available, I would assume maybe in the next 30 to 45 days, the entire group of trainings. And then we do want to continue to cover the USDA Foods topics, because there are a plethora of them this year. If we thought 2020 was fun, 2021 sure hasn't let off the gas. So I did want to cover some of the concerns that we've heard about the inventory release software system. We are finding that, you know, with everything, change is always hard, and we certainly understand that. But there are some pluses to the new, we refer to the Gold Star Foods system, Northwest Distribution, with the acronym GSF-NWD, still labeled Inventory Release Software System, or IRIS. So that is still our go-to system for being able to release all of the USDA foods that you procured through WebSCM back in February of this year. So while it is different, there are some things that you need to be aware of that are pros to the system, and you need to start incorporating those into your inventory management processes. So the new system has quite a few inventory management reports. It's really important for you as a user to ensure that you review the USDA live inventory report before placing your orders. And the reason for that is that particular report shows you specifically what foods have been received at the warehouse and in what quantities. So if you look at that report and determine that you have 65 cases of green beans sitting in your inventory, you need to be able to release those products for delivery to your school system. And keep in mind that with direct delivery products, we do have a 60-day dwell time. So it's really important to make sure that you're looking at that report. And just as a friendly reminder, if you have any questions, please make sure that you put those in the Q&A rather than in the chat feature, so that our team can address those. And then the next topic of inventory reports to cover is the Review USDA On Request report. So that report exists so that you know what foods for USDA Foods you placed requisitions for in February, but those foods have not yet arrived in the warehouse. And the reason that information is really critical to know is because as you're planning adjustments to your menu, because we know that you folks have been having to really change those menus sometimes on a daily basis, this gives you an opportunity to know what foods you can be planning for, so that if you are having to adjust your menus, you can take those foods into consideration as well. It tells you the quantity of cases that you have on order, as well as the expected delivery date into the warehouse for those items. One word of caution when you run that USDA On Request report is to understand that with everything else with the supply chain, there have also been delays in deliveries for USDA Foods. So keep that in mind. While that date that is provided on the report is a target date, the USDA Foods team has been very instrumental in providing regular communication about delays when we know about them. So please also pay very particular attention to the USDA Foods updates that come out from our team regularly through the broadcast email system. We take all those bits of communication to manage your inventory. And then the other piece of advice with the new inventory release software system is to ensure that you have created a further processed order guide for efficient ordering. If you don't know how to accomplish that task, when you log into the inventory release software system, on your dashboard, you actually see who your customer service representative with Gold Star Foods is. It's a hyperlink to their email. Click on that link, send them an email and say, hey, I could really use some assistance understanding this system, and I need to create an order guide that makes sense for me. Because you may not have access to all the available further processed goods if you didn't requisition raw material bulk pounds. So what we don't want to continue to happen is we have seen the good majority of our school districts try to order further processed products, but you don't have raw bulk material pounds, so you don't have access to those further processed items. So make that order guide customized for your success. So those are some pluses for the system. Now let's go ahead and cover some other issues in the system. So it's really important to pay close attention to the dashboard that is provided in the inventory release software system, specifically the available pounds by manufacturer's dashboard. If you look at your system, it is customized to show you what manufacturers are holding raw bulk material pounds for you. So referencing back to that further order guide that I just mentioned, you would only want to have a order guide that incorporated the manufacturer products that are available for your raw bulk material. So for instance, this particular user would want on their further order guide all of the products available through Cargill, all of the products available through Smucker, all of the products available through Simplot, all of the products available for National Food Group, and all of the products available through Tyson, because they did requisition pounds to those particular manufacturers. It's also important to notice that the name of the manufacturer is a hyperlink. And if you click on the name, like National Food Group, you can see that they have a total number of pounds that they're holding for this particular user of 7,428 pounds. But what does that mean? If you click on the hyperlink, you can see that National Food Group is actually holding for this particular user pounds of apples and pounds of pears. So this user wouldn't have access to peach products, but they would have access to all of the applesauce cups and the diced pear cups in sufficient quantity, because they've got over 7,000 pounds, 5,000 plus of apples and 2,000 plus of the pears. So make sure that you pay close attention to what is being held for you to use, because if you are not placing orders for those pounds of products, what will happen is at the end of the year, you will have lost out on your entitlement that you put into all those pounds, because the state agency is going to claim all those pounds back for use for someone else in the coming school year. So then let's also talk about what comes next. We do not want you to lose the balance in your chicken products. So please keep in mind that when you requisitioned raw bulk material chicken, that material was given to you in a 60-40 split. You got 60% of that meat as white, and you got 40% of that meat as dark. So if you, for example, requisitioned 100 pounds of raw bulk material chicken, you have sitting in your bank 60 pounds of white and 40 pounds of dark, and you need to draw down the equivalency of all those pounds. So you really have to balance your orders. And the reason I talk about this is because look carefully at the example on the screen. This particular user right now is sitting in excess of 5,000 pounds of white meat, and they only have 400 pounds of dark meat. So what does that tell you? They were drawing down all of their dark meat products, but not drawing down products that use the white meat. So at the end of the year, they won't have any more dark meat, but they're going to have all this white meat that they're going to lose, and it's going to come back to the state agency. So keep that in mind. Now, we do recognize that there has been a problem with Tyson making available dark meat products. So we understand that maybe balancing hasn't been as easy for you as it would have been in the past. But we do have products that draw down both white and dark meat, so you need to be ordering those, and then also supplant products that only draw down white meat, and that will help you balance the remainder of the products that you have. There is one exception to this, and that is that if you claimed raw bulk material off of the sweeps tab, it is possible that you claimed cases of only white meat products or only dark meat products. So that could be contributing to some form of imbalance. But you need to be aware of how much raw bulk material you have and what products you can order with that raw bulk material. Don't forget, this is also part of your USDA Foods entitlement value, and it's only a value if you draw it down and use it in your school meals programs, because at the end of the year, all raw bulk material pounds of any sort, chicken, apples, pork, beef, will come back to the state agency account. You will lose those pounds.
Okay, we have a question.
Okay, and it sounds like we have a question specific to that.
Will we eventually be able to see the percentage of white and dark meat each chicken product uses on Gold Star?
That's a really great question. What we are asking Gold Star to make available to us is to be able to work with, so we've talked in the past about what an SEPDS tells us and how we have access when the products are manufactured. The manufacturer will actually tell us that, let's just say, let's use chicken nugget as an example. A chicken nugget to create uses, these are all fictitious numbers because I don't have them all memorized, but a chicken nugget takes 1 pound of dark meat to make and 2 pounds of white meat in any given case of product. So you can see that you're drawing down the white meat at twice the rate you are the dark meat. So that is how the drawdowns work. But what we're asking Gold Star to create is some type of a calculator so that when you chose a product, the data all exists in the system. If you chose to order cases of chicken nuggets and clicked on the calculator, what my expectation or vision would imply is that it would show you how much exactly of your white and dark meat would be drawn down and how many cases you could actually get out of the number of pounds you have sitting in your raw material banks. Now, this is a data-driven concept. So with data-driven concepts, we have to rely on IT folks that understand what we're communicating, and then an implementation that actually meets our needs. So that is something that we are working towards. But if you are at a point where you understand how raw bulk materials go into a manufactured product and would like to have access to the drawdown figures for each one of the products that you're ordering, we are happy to provide that to you so that you can do those calculations internally before placing your orders. So for the time being, the answer is we don't have it. We hope to have something, so stay tuned. But those are the kinds of ideas that we really appreciate having from users of the system. So great question, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So with that, then we're going to go ahead and move on. I'm sorry if you guys have to listen to me a lot, but we are going to move on to some of the things that are on the horizon for USDA Foods, because we are at that time of year. Hard to imagine, but we are actually planning for placing orders in February of 2022 in our WebSCM system. So what does that mean? First, let's cover the fact that the Advisory Council, that's what AC stands for, has a fiduciary duty to review the school year 22-23 USDA Foods available list on behalf of all school districts. However, USDA in their infinite wisdom usually doesn't get us that foods available list until about mid-December. So we start having to make decisions in mid to late December during the holiday season for orders that have to be placed in February. I know, I wish I could change it, but I can't. It's not in my purview to do so. But we do know that our Advisory Council members are aware of this responsibility. Also, as a side note, please pay attention to the USDA Foods update that was just sent via broadcast email, because we are asking others to participate in the Advisory Council. So read that update, and if you're interested in participating as an Advisory Council member, we'd love to have you. So that's the first order of business, is reviewing the new list once it is received from USDA. And we then need to make decisions on what type of further processing will take place in Idaho. I will share with everyone that based on this year's experience with further processing, I'm kind of over it, to be perfectly honest. Further processing takes so much of the state agency's time to manage. So we are going to have some conversations about further processing in Idaho and what that looks like in the future. It is possible that you, as a user of raw bulk materials, may be processing on your own. I don't know that to be true for next year, but managing the state participation agreements is time-consuming, complex, and all of the raw bulk materials that are based on those products really does take a lot of state agency time, and it's very convoluted. In addition to that, every year, right about this time, I get 2 to 3 emails and phone calls a day from every national processor wanting to process in Idaho. At one point, we processed over 60 products in Idaho. We are down to about 28, I believe, and that's because we don't have the manpower to manage all those further processed products within our state. So if we expand further processing, it's going to fall on the backs of users. And what I'm saying is you will then become responsible for procuring your own agreements with a processor and managing all of your raw bulk material pounds. And there are regulations around that process, and it is time consuming. So I just want to be very transparent that the decisions moving forward on how we further process in Idaho, there is going to be a lot of discussion around that. Then, of course, WebSCM trainings. We're working diligently to update the WebSCM trainings so that new users, we have a lot of new food service directors, understand what WebSCM does, what we rely on it to do, and essentially making sure that everyone is prepared to place their requisitions in WebSCM in February of 2022. Prior to that, we need to make sure that all folks understand how you forecast, because unless you forecasted for use of USDA Foods, you really don't know what to order when the ordering catalog is released. So we'll be making decisions about what's made available in our ordering catalog. And then, of course, in February, we'll be placing requisitions in WebSCM. One word of caution, please, please, please make sure that when the state agency sends out the DoD survey, where you let us know how much of your remaining available entitlement you want allocated to DoD, after you've placed your requisitions in WebSCM, if you do not respond to that survey, we do not allocate money, whether it's left over or not. And I've had a substantial amount of people this year say, oh, how come I don't have money for DOD? Because you didn't respond to the survey, and I am not going to second guess what your intentions were for your available remaining entitlement. So please pay particular attention to that survey if you anticipate using the DOD program in school year 22-23. Another question. Thanks, Linda.
We visited with some of the brokers / manufacturers at the food show, and it is my understanding that our pricing will be hurt if we individually process versus the state processing on behalf of the entire state. Any feedback on that?
Really great observation, and thank you for bringing that up for the group to hear. So I do want to make sure that you were able to hear the question. It was essentially that conversations with brokers imply that if school districts have to go out and get their own agreement with each individual manufacturer, your pricing will change. The reason that we do state participation agreements as a state is because, like anything else, bulk purchasing typically provides better pricing. Now, what we've seen this year is we've all kind of been over a barrel, right? Because all of the manufacturers have made changes to the original pricing that they agreed upon for school year 21-22. We do have to allow some flexibility due to market constraints on whether or not we accept that pricing, because if we don't, then basically all your raw bulk material pounds that were requisitioned in anticipation of a normal year you wouldn't be able to use them. So we accepted adjustments in pricing on your behalf since we had no choice, but it was all part of the supply chain issue. And we asked for clarification on your behalf. And we did push back on a couple of price adjustments. We had a couple manufacturers that wanted to implement them immediately. And I said, you know, we've got a contract and it says 90 days. So we work on your behalf through the state participation agreements to get you the best pricing possible. But again, it is really a drain on our staff on those state participation agreements. So if we get feedback that individual schools aren't happy with what we choose to further process, then the other option is to have schools do that on their own. So it's a great question.
Next question, when did you say to expect the survey?
The survey for DOD comes at the end of the school year 22-23 requisitions in WebSCM. So if I can try to give you a visual representation of the timeline, what happens is the state agency makes a decision about what products will be in our individual catalog. So USDA offers more than 200 USDA Foods products. There is no way that the state of Idaho can bring in full truckloads of all 200 items. So we consolidate that list down to the most valuable, usable products within our state. We do that with the advice on the advice of our advisory council. So that's why they review that foods available list. Then we put a catalog into WebSCM that includes those high value items. So what do I mean by that? We always offer raw bulk material chicken. We always offer the 40-pound chubs of beef. We always offer cases of green beans and peaches and pears, the things that are really important in your school programs. So we consolidate down, that catalog is put into WebSCM, and then we release the catalog for users to go in and place their individual requisitions. But when you are placing those requisitions, you are doing so on an estimated available entitlement value. Your entitlement value is not actually shored up until USDA actually updates WebSCM. So everything we do in WebSCM in February of 2022 will be based on estimated entitlement. USDA does not shore up entitlement and come up with the actual calculations until November of 2022. So you will use estimated entitlement to place requisitions. That's why forecasting is so important, because if you spend all of your estimated entitlement when you place requisitions in WebSCM, you will not have any entitlement left over to allocate to DoD. So you have to make decisions in advance of placing those requisitions as to what is most important to your program. Once those requisitions are submitted and the state agency consolidates them into truckloads and submits them to USDA, then you will check your available entitlement and respond to the survey. It typically comes out the beginning of March. Beginning to mid-March is when we need to have responses, because we have to tell USDA how much to allocate to DoD in April. So hopefully that.
I don't see that.
Oops. We're having a technical difficulty again. Today's just not the day.
It's just a comment.
Okay, cool. All right, so then moving on, great questions. So then our next slide. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and now I get a break, and we're going to turn the time over to Sean, who's going to share with you guys about a new grant opportunity.
Good morning, everyone. The application period is opening up today for the NTIG Technology Innovation Grant. The mini grant application, along with instructions, was emailed out this morning to everyone. The applications are due January 14th. All applications submitted will be scored and awards will be made by February 4th. You will have 6 months to spend the funds. The application forms will also be available on the SDE's grant opportunity page later today. I looked this morning and it wasn't up, but it should be up later. And the link is provided there on the slide. The Child Nutrition Programs has funding for the NTIG mini grants for 3 years. This year's grants will be phase 1, and we have a little over $172,000 available to award. To be eligible for funding, you must be a sponsor and operate one or more of our programs, NSLP, SSO, SFSP, or CACFP programs. The maximum amount of grant funding you may request is $24,000, and it must be used to purchase technology solutions that support your food service operations. Funds may be used to purchase hardware such as laptops, mobile devices, networking devices, scanners, printers, etc. You can also purchase software such as POS systems, pre-order meal software solutions, inventory management, menu software, as just to name a few. And then funds also can be used to pay for training on any of the hardware or software that is being purchased. Just please read through the application that was sent out and let me know if you have any questions, and I will turn it back over to TJ.
Fantastic. So we look forward to receiving your applications, folks. This is a good time to shore up your programs with some technology solutions. And then also we wanted to just share with you some really important reminders. These are time-sensitive reminders about your operations. So first, please keep in mind that when operating the Seamless Summer option, on-site monitoring is a requirement, and it is a requirement for all sites, not just one site. So it's different than when you're operating NSLP. All sites must be observed by the food service director at least once during this particular school year. You'll find the required form for the SSO monitoring in the download section form of My Idaho CMP. And then also, don't forget that direct certification is still a requirement, regardless of the fact that students are all eating for free. You must run direct certification at a minimum 3 times per year. So now's a really good time to go ahead and run your direct certification. Please keep in mind you need to save those lists. They're part of your 3 years plus current record-keeping requirement. And then finally, if you are running the after-school snack program in conjunction with your FSO operations, an after-school snack program review must be completed twice during the school year. Once during the first 4 weeks of the program. So if you started your program in October and haven't done that yet, you're kind of behind the 8 ball, so make sure you get that done. And then once before the program actually ends. So do keep those requirements in mind. And of course, there is also a review form for the after-school snack program in the download form section of My Idaho CMP. And so with that, we'd like to see if there are any other questions available or any other questions from the audience. And I think we have some general comments, and I don't know, do we want to read out those general comments? Or so just so everyone's aware, since it doesn't look like we currently have any questions, we do have some folks that have some feelings about process pricing. Basically, this person says that my feelings about the process pricing is that we do co-ops for that exact reason. We in small districts would be hurt the most with changing the processing to district contracts instead of state contracts. And that's very true in our particular state. We have a lot of really small rural districts that depend on our co-ops to help them, get decent pricing on the commercial products. And so that is very true of the state participation agreements as well. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. That is certainly something that the advisory council needs to take into consideration. And I think
we have no other questions.
We have no other questions or comments. It does look like there is one question now. So
directors must do the on-site monitoring for all sites. We have always split this function with our administrative team.
That's fine.
yes, and that's perfectly fine. How you go about completing those, you all have roles and responsibilities in operations of these programs, and you have trusted partners, kitchen managers and the like. So definitely, we're not suggesting that you can't utilize the staff in the way that they've always functioned. Just make sure that you're completing those site reviews at all sites and that you document. That's the most important thing, is ensure that you document the review and if there was any corrective action and what took place as a result of that corrective action. So please make sure that you use the forms made available.
And don't allow a cashier to review themselves.
Yes.
Themselves.
Yes, great feedback. So obviously, accountability is overseeing other people's roles and responsibilities. So clearly, it's not going to fly well if I say, I personally am doing a great job. Thank you, me. So.
Okay, next question. Are the slides of the webinar available? Sorry, I'm yelling.
Just the recording.
Okay, and sorry, so Jessica has no voice. She was saying that all we make available is the recording, and the reason for that is because ADA compliance with these is really difficult to manage because of all of the images and everything, and we have limited staff resources for ADA compliance. So we will make the recording available. Hopefully that will be sufficient, but the slides are adorable, aren't they? Anything else?
No other questions, no other chat.
And obviously, the last thing we'd like to do is to sincerely thank you all for everything that you do. As we were putting this presentation together, I thought to myself, and I actually thought it out loud and put it on the slide, never have I ever wished a year would just hurry up and end like I have 2021. But then I remember 2020. Please, everyone, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. We appreciate all you do. We're here for you. If there's anything that we can do to assist you now, please don't hesitate to reach out. And Best to send emails, just because when you do call, you may be calling an individual who is swamped, because we all have different roles and responsibilities. And if you send an email, then we can ferry that out to the person that is most adequately prepared to answer your questions. So thank you so much for your time today. Stay safe. We appreciate you.